begin, I asked you this at the premiere, but for the benefit of this audience, I wonder if you could speak about how you all came together in the decision to adapt this work of sort of academic text.
Yeah, I mean, so Jordan and I were writing a different project at the kind of winter of 2020, and we had been kind of popped up with Ariela, and we're just, kind of living through, COVID lockdowns and, crazy fires in California, and just feeling like totally powerless. And Jordan found the book and recommended it, and we kind of read it and all had like a mind meld moment of like, oh, this is maybe something we could do that feels extremely relevant to what we're living through, and also to kind of, feeling powerless, making a movie on our own terms about a bunch of characters, also kind of taking agency over their situation. And so the three of us kind of came together to write that, and Dan followed shortly thereafter as somebody who was kind of part of the development process, and we reached out to Andrejs, and he just seemed down, and then the kind of we built the plane as it was taking off. We wrote the script, we financed the movie in under a year, and then we're here 7 months after wrapping production, 8 months after wrapping production. So very, very quick.
And did it always begin, was the idea always to try and take this work and sort of apply it to a genre picture structure?
Yeah, I think the idea was like we wanted to dramatize what was in the book, and it started from the place of like, I think wanting it first, at least in my part, to like really make like a propaganda film, and then shortly thereafter, Ariela and Jordan pushing back on that and being like, no, like, why are we making this movie? And also, in dramatizing the ideas and putting those ideas into people's mouths, and actually having people act them out, it immediately gets way more complicated than just theory. And that's kind of what's exciting, is the movie itself challenges the book while also kind of expressing the ideas and making them accessible to a wide audience. And that was at the end of the day, the goal was we need to start having conversations about what we're going to do to move on from the way that we currently live, because it's not sustainable. And I think that, in considering eco-sabotage, that is an important thing to be talking about and wrestling with.
I'd love to hear from Andrejs about what his reaction first was when the idea of adapting the book into a heist picture was first pitched.
Well, it's not what you normally expect will happen when you write a non-fiction book, that someone will say, hi, I'd like to turn this into film. So obviously my first response was just surprise. I mean, why would anyone want to do this? And then I kind of fell in love with these guys and their ideas behind it, and I've been consistently just very impressed by how, well, not just the final output, but how articulate and intelligent and creative they've been throughout the whole process.
Was Andrejs involved much in the actual filmmaking process beyond that? No, he shook his head no. The question is regarding the tension between preserving a radical spirit, but also making something that is entertaining, commercial.
I mean, I think the thing from the very beginning of it was, I think, there were a few, I think, ideas that we had. We're not going to be following the singular protagonist. It's going to be a story of a collective. Also, we so frequently see stories of kind of leftist action that end in tragedy. And, the fact that, one of the earliest conversations we had was, this is going to be Ocean's 11 for eco-terrorism, that, they're going to have the perfect plan and they're going to get away with it. And even if that's not necessarily 100% reflective of the way it would actually go in real life, it's a movie. We can be aspirational. The aspirational idea here is not necessarily what they do, but the fact that a group of 8 people from disparate backgrounds come together, united by a bigger idea, and actually do something without falling apart, and they're one step ahead of the government, and they're one step ahead of the system, and their target is just. At least, in the eyes of the film. And I think that in kind of constructing constructing that, we were looking at, a vast legacy of heist film and of crime film that has, I think, expressed these ideas through entertainment, and I think that we were really just applying that legacy to a different subject.
Were there certain specific films that you looked at beyond Ocean's 11? I'd love to hear from also the editor as well, Dana, covered in that regard.
Oh god, there were so many movies to watch. I think I at least made an entire list of like every heist movie that existed and then tried to watch as many as possible while we were cutting the film.
Were there any discoveries in that process of research that went, oh, we need to have that moment, or we need to have that?
Okay. Battle of Algiers, Reservoir Dogs, Woman at War, Nocturama, Zabriskie Point.
Write these down.
Thief, go for it. Rafifi. What else?
If a Tree Falls.
If a Tree Falls.
Day Night, Day Night.
Day Night, Day Night is a really amazing movie by Julia Locktive that is a really interesting movie about somebody committing an act of terrorism that we watched. There's so many other things that I think that were. Charlie Varick was a discovery for me. That movie's really amazing.
You mentioned that this was inspired in part by your parents. Could you talk about them and the role that they play and what they do?
Well, my dad plays the bookstore owner who's complaining about the AC being on, which is a really easy, natural, But no, I mean, they are people that, my mom and dad have worked in climate science and research and on the software engineering. Oh wow! On the software engineering side, they write the code for the climate model, and my mom's been doing that my whole life. My dad for the last 10 years, and I think that in a spiritual way, the role they played was just, growing up with the impending doom of climate change hanging over my head, and before it was something that you could discuss in polite society, and I think outside of that, they also raised me with a love of movies, even if they totally didn't get why I wanted to work in film because they're scientists, but now they've come around. So,
what is the action that you want the audience to take away from this?
I think that there's this notion. I think that there's a notion that a movie like this is, and I think it's just kind of driven by this impact campaign, issue campaign. Go to this website, donate to this cause. Your conscience is clear. You've done the thing after watching a movie like this, and I think that that's something that I really want to push back on. The goal of art and the goal of culture is not to go out and do one thing and then the movie has delivered on its promise. It's I think that this is something that the provocation of the film is, do you empathize with these characters? Does what they do kind of maybe frighten you? Do you have questions about it? That's something that is upon all of us to be thoughtful about how we can create different systems and force the systems that currently exist to be working to, create a sustainable living, for everybody. So I think that at the end of the day, the movie is asking people to take stock of that and to also kind of recognize that new and fresh tactics might be needed, whether or not they are the tactics in this movie.
And relatedly, read Andrejs' book.
Yeah, if there's any direct action, you do that. It came together rather fast, but the question was about how it did ultimately come together. Were there any resistance to the concept?
We didn't get a single meeting in Hollywood really about this film through the conventional means of financing an independent movie. But at the same time, the financing came together very quickly. I was lucky enough. I went to Cannes with Ariela in July of last year, and we literally just talked to anybody who would listen about this movie, embarrassingly for a week and a half, and but found this, Alex Hughes. We met him and we told him what the movie was and what it was about, and I think within 15 minutes he was like, I'm in. And then I'm making a video game with Mazzei, who I did my first movie with, and the financier of that game, I sent him the script and he was like, I love this. And so I think that I'm a big believer that if you have a great idea and you can speak about it eloquently, the right partners will present themselves.
So this is a question in terms of both editing and writing. So you choose some of the most tense scenes in the film to cut to a backstory flashback. So I was just wondering how you came about constructing the story structure.
We had like a version of the script where there was actually only one big flashback and it sucked. And I think that, you know, then we watched Reservoir Dogs and we kind of had this funny idea that like that was like a movie that was like such a big breakout noir hit, but it's also not really like about anything and it has no point. It's just kind of like a stylistic exercise, and we thought it would be really interesting to kind of like rip off its structure, but for like a purpose. And yeah.
Edging is an advanced and effective technique.
I'm glad there's a question about Gavin's score because it's incredible.
It's out of this world. Gavin actually came to set, and it's amazing that you called out the textures in particular because so he came to our ranch set and for 2 days basically played the entire environment as an instrument. So he had a percussionist with him and he had like bows, and so he would like drum on a random piece of sheet metal and like play a bow on this thing and, you know, record the sand. And so he recorded like, you know, 15 hours of sound or whatever, and then he basically took that back into the studio, and that was essentially the source for the entire score. So all of the synths and everything were kind of built out of those textures. All of the drums are like somewhat manipulated, you know, him banging on sheet metal. And then the idea was like, let's take this and let's turn it into something that is like a more conventional action movie, heisty kind of score. The guy's a genius.
We have time for one more question, right in the middle.
The facilities where you shot, were they actual facilities? And if so, was it difficult to secure them?
Where did you shoot the film? What can you say?
Yeah, no, we can. We shot, I mean, most of the Texas material was shot in New Mexico at a ranch called Diamond Hill Ranch. And basically, the pipeline was a build. We had to construct that because we weren't going to blow up a real pipeline. We joked about it, but we did, you know. But the valve station was real. That was a real valve station that just happened to be on the ranch, and we actually tried to get access to the valve station to shoot the scene where she like turns the wheel off, and the company that owns it was actually like super into the idea. They were like, this is great, we'd love to support the project, shouldn't be a problem, just need to take a look at the script. Total formality, and then we ghosted them. We never talked to them again. But it was fine for us to shoot outside of the valve station, and so we did that. So then when she actually turns off the wheel, we had to build that too. But basically everything but the wheel and the pipeline were just all practical. You know what actually horrifically exists in our world.
And how long was the pipeline that you built?
150 feet.
Well, please put your hands together for filmmaker Andrejs from How to Vote.
Hey, this is Eric from MyOnCinema.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.